Hi, I'm Kelly Paletta, Director of Sales and Marketing at EXP Technical. This is a pre-recorded message. Our live presentation will begin in just a minute. While I have your attention, I wanted to share something with you that may change your perspective on the world in which you do business. Did you realize that cybercrime is the world's third largest economy? Number one is the US, number two is China. Behind that is cybercrime. It's organized crime, and it is an $8 trillion a year market. Another troubling fact is that cyber criminals know that it's the people in your organization that are the weak link, and so they focus their attacks on things that will trick your end users into doing something that they shouldn't. So what can you do? Well, one thing you can do is train your staff, and at EXP Technical, we've been fighting cybercrime for 20 years now. One of our values is share knowledge, share success, so we have distilled what we have learned into the very best security awareness training we could create. It's available at EXP Academy, academy.exptechnical.com, and it will help your staff recognize when they are in an attacker's crosshairs, when they are likely to be a victim of a cyber attack, and let them know what to do to get out of that position. And best of all, this course is completely free. There's no paid premium content, no in-course advertising. Registering, enrolling in a course won't put you on a marketing list. It's just information that we want to get out there to make the region more secure. Enrolling in free security awareness training at EXP Academy is one way that you can supercharge your business and make it secure the EXP way. I'll see you in just a few minutes in the live presentation. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our webinar. I'm Kelly Paletta. I'm Director of Sales and Marketing at EXP Technical. And today, we're going to be talking about human vulnerability and cybersecurity. We have a very interesting and informative and entertaining guest presenter to speak to you today. But before we get started with that and before I introduce our guest, I do have a few administrative announcements that I'd like to run through at the top of these events. First of all, as our last couple of webinars have been, this one's going to be pretty interactive. There will be times where you can participate. You're certainly welcome to ask questions as we go, and you can do that using the Q&A feature or the chat feature in your Zoom session. And so the difference, I guess, between the two of those is if you use Q&A, that will be private. The message will only go to me. If you use the chat session, other attendees can see the questions or the comments that you're presenting to the audience here. Now, one of the questions that comes up every time is this event being recorded? And fortunately, our guest presenter has been gracious enough to allow us to record this event. It will be available at EXP Academy, which is our technology resources site, and also available on our YouTube page. And be patient, it may take me about a week before that's available because I like to go through and edit the transcript and do a little bit of video post-processing if I need to. So bear with me on that, but be on the lookout for that. I will send you all an email when that is available. Should be about a week from now. And that's probably a good segue for me to start introductions here. So our guest today is Dr. Erik Huffman. He is an entrepreneur, a founder. He leads Handshake Leadership, which is an organization for scholarly research and cybersecurity training and awareness. He heads Pikes Peak Robotics, which I think that's a robotics club, and he provides mentoring and coaching for kids through that organization. And you can correct me if I'm wrong on that as we go, Erik. He also is a podcast host, and I'll get to you. We're almost done here, but he is a podcast host. He hosts Mike Club podcast, and Mike, MIC, stands for Minorities in Cyber. And I would encourage you to subscribe to that. It's really fascinating topics. I watched one of the podcasts this morning, really interesting topics. And on top of all of that, his day job is director of IT for BombBomb. And BombBomb, if you don't know, BombBomb is a video messaging platform, and it's a product I'm a big fan. That's how Dr. Huffman showed up on my radar, is that I'm a fan of BombBomb. I use that product for video messaging, and it kind of led to me being aware of some of the presentations that he had done in the past. So after that long-winded introduction, welcome to our webinar, Dr. Erik Huffman.
Hey, I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
All right. Well, and that's all you got to say, huh?
Yeah, I'm just ready to get into it. There's a lot that I do, but this is not about me. It's about the content and us coming
Okay.
together and having a good conversation.
Well, I'm really excited to have you here. And I'm going to make it about you. I'm going to throw some of your words at you to start off with. So I wanted to start off with a quote. This was something, it might have come from one of your TEDx talks. And if you're watching this and you're curious, um, Dr. Huffman has presented a couple of TEDx talks, and they are both really fascinating, entertaining. They're within that constrained format of, I think they have to be within 15 minutes. And so it's pretty tight but packed with information. But one of the things, and I think it came from one of those presentations, you said cybersecurity is more closely related to psychology than computer science. And I was wondering if you could expand on that or tell us a little bit about what you had in mind when you said that.
Yeah, definitely. Because when you think of cybersecurity, you're talking about attackers, and then you're talking about victims as well. It's much more so than just ones and zeros or a network. We're talking about impact to people, and we're talking attacks that do impact people and organizations as like a collective. And so we like to think of it as, hey, this hacker hacked this machine until it happens personally. Then it's like this hacker stole my data. And we use verbs like stole and taken, which are things that are physical. Things are like you've still something. It's more like we think of it from a physical perspective. And all of that is more psychological based. And when we talk victims, we're talking about the mentality of victims. And a lot of times when we talk hackers, we're talking about the mentality of the hackers. Then after the fact, us uber nerds, we think of like what cool mechanisms or what did they do to get that data. But I think it is much more psychologically based than it is computer science founded. And I will always stand by that.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because in my experience, which is kind of limited because I'm just a sales rep and I'm not doing the triage and the remediation, but it seems like there's a level of complacency that people think it's a technology problem until it happens to them. They think, oh, there's firewalls and there's antivirus and there's endpoint detection and response and data loss prevention and all this technology to protect me.
Yeah, for sure. I think the last Verizon data breach investigation report said 78% of all data breaches involve the human element. And so we're talking about the 78%, which are involving people. We're not talking about the 10, 15%, 5%, whatever, which are just, the nerds down in the basement doing the hacking. Most attacks they're attacking people, they're targeting humans first before they start targeting the machine, before they go toe to toe with the firewall. They want to figure out if the easiest way to get in your network or get into your computer, in your environment, is to make you, the user, a participant in your own attack. If you are a participant in your own attack, there is nothing no technology can do or technology can leverage. But general population thinks, well, the spam filter is going to save me, the firewall is going to save
Yeah,
me, and things like that. And they think that cybersecurity or cyber or security itself is a job title that someone holds. No, it's actually a duty upon everybody in the organization. And everybody needs to take part in securing the organization, because if you become a participant in your own attack, it's like unlocking the door to your house, allowing the person to run in and leave with everything and say, man, they stole my stuff. Like, man, you let them in. Like, and that's the 78%. That is the majority of attacks that we have going on. And I like in the intro, you said that cybercrime is the third largest economy. 78% of that economy is involving the human element and attacks regarding the human element. And that's just from Verizon. Those are the attacks that we know about, not the everyday data breaches, not the, hey, someone scammed you, or hey, the small company that no one's heard of has gotten attacked, because there's a lot of those as well that aren't included in that number.
right, right. Well, and that's one thing that's really encouraging about this series and the fact that, for one, that you're willing to speak to our audience, but also in attendance, I'm not sure if you're aware, we spoke a little bit about this previously, but the folks attending this event are this webinar and our series of webinars, typically they are not IT experts. And I love that about this audience. They're oftentimes they might be CEOs and founders and executives. They might be COOs and operations managers. There are a lot of office managers and a lot of people that, for lack of a better term, that are end users, that are people that don't have a lot of cybersecurity expertise by way of training. They don't have degrees, they don't have certifications, but to their credit, they attend events like this because that helps them keep cybersecurity and safer computing practices top of mind. So it's one way that at EXP, one of our values is share knowledge, share success. And this is one way that we feel like we can make the region, the Seattle area, the Puget Sound region more secure. I don't know, I'm kind of monologuing here, but it's off of your point that 78% of those attacks involve the human element. It's people. And again, I'll repeat a phrase that you've said recently, and that is that attackers log in, they don't hack in. Somebody invites them in, right?
That is true, and I'm glad you all are doing this, because a lot of times I speak at conferences and things like that, and you end up preaching to the choir, because technical individuals are people that are passionate about security. Yeah, we speak a lot to each other, but those messages need to hit, the CEOs, the COOs, the CFOs, the individuals that are not quite plugged in on the daily basis, simply because it's just not. As a CEO, you have a lot to worry about on top of security. And so just taking time out of your day to listen to a conversation like this is a huge step in the right direction. And we need more individuals that do not have information security or cybersecurity in their job title, just to tune in and listen to what's going on in the industry or what's going on in the threat landscape, because you're protecting it too. You just can't hire someone to protect your organization and they're going to protect it from even what you're going to do with it, like against it. That's not fair for the security person, and that's putting
Right.
too much trust into one particular individual.
Right. Well, now that you've said that, though, I am gonna for a little while, I want to dive kind of deep into the psychology of it. And some of this may be, now you presented to this audience about a year and a half ago, and some of this is review, but it's also so important to some of the things that we're going to talk about later. So one of the concepts that you've spoken to in the past and that I've heard you mention are these principles of influence. And can you speak briefly to what are the principles of influence and how do they relate to a person's vulnerability to a cyber attack?
All right. So the principles of influence, you can think of digital social engineering or social engineering at all. Think of it like malicious marketing, and think of like a spam or phishing email as like their campaign that they're casting out. And just like you would like to do as an owner of an organization or owner of a company or an entrepreneur, you want your click rate high because you want people to click on your marketing. Cyber criminals are the same exact way. And so just like you want to influence your target audience's behavior, they want to influence their target audience behavior as well, utilizing the same principles of influence. So one is reciprocity. So if they give you something, you're going to feel obligated to give something back to them. Like the example I like to use is like when you go out to eat, they give you a mint on top of your bill, because you are likely to tip 20% more because they did so. The same with car dealerships. They give you something and you are more likely to buy a car because they did so. That's just human nature. Next, like commitment and consistency is just kind of don't quit and something's going to happen. That's pretty self-explanatory. Then you have social proof. So with attackers, they could try to prove that they're not AI, that they're not they're targeting you specifically, like in a spear phishing attempt, by letting you know, like, hey, we saw your company acquired this, or we saw that your company is utilizing this. That's social proofing. Next, liking. Like if you like someone or if you like something, they are going to influence your behavior. Just like you're more likely to click on an ad with these certain colors, or you're likely to go out to eat if the food looks a certain way. They do the same thing with in these social engineering attempts. When they give you something, like, so if you like Amazon, you're more likely to buy something from Amazon. If you like Apple, you're more likely to buy something from Apple. So they will spoof or fake, being those potential companies are a representative of those companies, because you're more likely to click on that. Then scarcity. So like scarcity, if there's like one left, like Amazon, they will put in red letters and numbers. There is one left. You're more likely to buy it. Just like with cars, there's like 1 in 100. The car can look ugly, but you're like, dude, I kind of want it because it's so rare. And then lastly, you have authority, which is the principle of influence there. Authority is like, do this or else. And we see a lot of that with like faking a CEO's name, faking a CEO's job title or something along the lines of that. Because that authority, that is authoritative figure, you're more likely to fall in line with what they're saying to do because of their position. Not really if you respect the person or if you like the person, but because of the position of the person, you're more likely to fall in line and do whatever they're saying because they have authority. Doesn't mean they have your trust and respect. They just have authority.
So authority, this is interesting. This will come up later because I'm going to throw some examples at you. But authority is a combination. It sounds like there's a couple of aspects of that. One is an authority figure, somebody that has certain credentials or a certain role. And the other is an authoritative command, like a parental command. You do this because I'm telling you to do this, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So with my research, I do a whole lot of phishing campaigns, and I work with a lot of organizations. And so the easiest way into an organization is like through sales or marketing. Nothing against them, but they're more
Nothing
likely
against
to
me. I am
engage.
sales and marketing.
Yeah, exactly.
So go,
Nothing against you at
but go
all.
on.
You're more likely to respond to me, and so I'm more likely to have a conversation with you. And so you can say, hey, and we talked for a couple of days, and I'm like, well, you know what? I got to back out. Your competitors are doing this, and this is a link. And you click on that, like, what are
Oh,
they doing? And then you click on that. Next thing you know, I'm trying to work my way in. And so those principles of influence is just, they just pile on top of each other. And that doesn't matter if you're man, woman, child, your ethnicity. Those are just human traits.
right.
All of us share those. Those are human traits that we all have. And it's not because I'm a I'm a professional in cybersecurity that I don't have these traits. No, you just got to be aware that you do have these traits and understand that you are in a unique environment that they could be exploited against you. And so you just got to think twice and understand, like, is this a marketing attempt on me? Or is this exactly what it seems to be? A lot of times it's not, and especially when you can't see or hear the person behind you, behind the other keyboard, then it makes it significantly harder to pick the right answer throughout all of this confusion that is going on, because you
Right.
have marketers marketing to you. You got hackers marketing to you. Every website you go to, they're marketing to you. And so you're just trying to feel your way through what's real, what's not. And sometimes you get way too comfortable and you just get a little click happy, and that's it.
Wow. So you're describing, so the just because this was shocking to me, you're describing just a few minutes ago an attack that I wasn't even aware of that I would be particularly vulnerable to. And that is kind of a long con on a social engineering attack where somebody poses through multiple emails to be a prospective client. And during that process, they establish trust. And then at some point, they say, this attachment is the RFP, or click on this link to see what your competitors are doing, or something that I'm very likely to click on. And your point is trust but verify, right? I mean, or the kind of the general rule in cybersecurity is tap the brakes, be sure that the person you're talking to is who they purport to be.
Exactly. So it's difficult for small businesses to understand that you may not in your mind make a lot of money, but would you work a week for $1 million? Would you work a week for $25,000? And so it's not like, hey, they're only gonna target these large companies. They're a decent payday. They're targeting everybody if possible. And there are individuals out there that are doing the work for it. They're willing to send multiple emails. They're willing to send multiple messages. And a lot of those, we can see those. Some of those are small businesses. We've seen some of those with large businesses. Just recently, I apologize, I forget the organization, but if you look it up, there was a organization that sent $25 million because the individual posed as the CFO and they convinced them in a deepfake attack to transfer $25 million. And so
Right.
they used the authority principle of influence. So they're the CFO and they got this deepfake attempt. And so this individual is listening and they're like, all right, this person is who we think they are because I can see or I can hear this person. So I'm going to transfer this $25 million based on the authority of the person that told me to do so. And $25 million gone. And that was a fairly decently sized organization. And these people, they're doing a significant amount of work to make it happen. And it sounds vain. I apologize if it sounds super vain, but they're good marketers. They're good at marketing.
Oh yeah.
They're nailing it. So if you think of like your click rate for your last marketing campaign, imagine it being like 15, 20%. Because that's how some of these social engineering attacks happen. That's how some of these phishing campaigns work. You send some out, you get like a 20% click rate. Organizations would flip if they get a 20% click rate on
I'd
one
be
of their
delighted.
ads.
Woo!
Yeah. So they're doing it in a similar way that we're doing it on the business side, on the good side, on the well-intended side. They're just taking that and they're flipping these principles of influence on their head and just executing at a very high level on us.
Right, right. And I confess, even benevolent marketers have read Robert Cialdini's book Influence, because and in fact, I can show behind the curtain, we're using those principles of influence right now. We're giving away free information in hopes that people come to know, like, and trust EXP Technical. And, if it comes time for them to decide on an IT support provider for their business, they might be familiar with us and feel some sort of, endearment to our organization. And we're also using likability. You're a very likable speaker. And so we're using that to our advantage too. And, but so I want to jump to one other technical thing, and then I'm going to throw some examples, and I think it's going to get fun. We're going to try some things that I've never done in a webinar before. But the other technical term that I want to ask you about is amygdala hijacking. It's one I've heard you use before. What is amygdala hijacking? What happens when that happens?
All right. So
And did I
amygdala,
say that right?
you did. You
Okay,
did.
good.
Amygdala hijacking is when your brain has an and immediate response, excuse me, because your amygdala is part of your limbic system. Your limbic system in your brain is fight or flight. And so until recently, now with AI and deepfakes becoming so prevalent in digital social engineering, that's why you wouldn't see attackers using like video to conduct attacks. Because if you can see the person, it's going to be like, no, stranger danger. I don't know this person. I don't know if I like this person. It sounds creepy. I'm out. I'm done. This is not what I'm looking for. But what amygdala hijacking is what happens with that fight or flight. In that fight or flight response, you just stop thinking and you just start acting. You just start doing things. So when amygdala hijacking hits, you stop processing the information at a high rate at like, okay, I'm a deductively reason through this situation. And you just start doing things. And this happens with cyber attacks more so than people realize. So there was a phishing campaign that I conducted. I will never forget this, and I've used this as an example before. I send messages out in like 3 tiers. One, I'm cheating. Like I'm using everything I possibly can against the organization. I'm spoofing everything. You're most likely going to click on this. I'm cheating. That's why I want my highest rate.
Mhm.
Most of them are in the middle. And then the last one is kind of like, ain't nobody gonna click on this. Like, just nobody's gonna click on this. Someone clicked on that. And so when I sent an email, and it was something along the lines of like, hey, we hacked your computer. We saw you looking at adult websites. Send us like 3 Bitcoin, which is like $11 billion, and we'll make it go away. And so this person like clicked on it and responded back. And me, I'm used to like people just messing with me. And so I'm like, this person's messing with me. So I'm like, all right, fill out this form, and so we can process your payment information. They filled out the form and they sent it back. And so next I'm like, timeout, like, hold up. I got actual information here. I'm conducting a campaign. I do not conduct any attacks for real. That's not what I'm doing. So I brought the individual in and I said, hey, what's going on with this? Are you just messing with me? If so, you should probably use fake info. Don't use your real info. And individual, after a bit of conversation, breaks down in tears and says he's going through marital problems. And the marital problems involved some of that. And so he just said, I just wanted it to go away. That on that line is close to amygdala hijacking as you can get. And unfortunately, I will bring this up and then we can move on from this because I don't want to make this conversation dark. There are individuals that go the full distance and in their lives because they lost their life savings in an attack. That is amygdala hijacking to a level I can't articulate to because I've never experienced that. But those things are real. So you get some on the panic side, you get some on the really dark side, but then you get some on the super excited side, like, hey, for a super basic example, you won some contest and you're like, oh crap, and you're there. Are one of the largest attacks in human history early in the days of the internet when AOL used to send a little disc out to everybody's house in the cool cases. I kind of miss those. I kind of don't, but I kind of miss those. You remember the I love you virus?
Oh, yeah.
Everybody, when they saw that, they brain just stopped thinking, processing, and they just thought, oh, who? And so they just click. Like, dude, like some of it is small bits of data where you just stop thinking. Some of it is like super emotionally driven when you stop thinking. Some of it is just crazy deep pain or hurt, and you just stop processing information. That occurs online and it occurs face to face. The biggest difference that we have is when you're online, you're still human. When you're face to face, you're still human. When you're face to face, you're built for that. You're created for that, whatever you choose to believe. When you're online, no one thought we'd get this far. My elementary teacher told me I would not have a calculator with me everywhere I went. So I had
I
to wear
know.
a
I
mask.
heard that line, and
Like,
guess what, Mr.
guess what
Ford?
we do? No one expected us to make it this far. And so this method of communication and deductive reasoning is new to us. And that's just it. We're bad at it. That's just being honest. We're just very bad at living and operating in this environment.
Yeah, indeed. And that, that gets back to one of my favorite of your quotes, which is that we're in in the cyber world, we're living in a world that we weren't built for.
That's true.
And in fact, one of our other webinar guests, Dr. Mark Dupuis, said practically the same thing in different words. And he was saying, if you've got hundreds of thousands, millions of years of evolution that teaches you to jump when you see a snake, you've got decades, hundreds of years that teach you to beware when you see a sign that says warning, or, but you've got, in some cases, there are new attacks like deepfakes and other things are minutes old, or they're, days old or weeks old. So we don't really know how to process these things. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit here. And I warned you that I had some examples. And so I'm going to share an example. Let's see, I'm going to talk and share my screen. So you should see, if I did it right, there should be a phishing email. So a
Yes,
few
sir.
ago, Tony Lasurge and I were asked to talk to a group of educators about security awareness. And again, I borrowed a little bit from Dr. Mark Dupuis on this, but this was, in one of the slides, I was like, well, if I wanted to phish you teachers, and I'm not an expert, I'm by any means at phishing, but I might try something like this. And I was wondering if you have any comments on this sort of a phishing attack, or maybe some of the principles that we've talked about and how they work in this sort of instance?
I like it. Just for a phishing attempt. So just know if I say something positive, it's probably kind of negative.
Right.
And so I like it because when if you're an educator, we all if you've been in education or if you ever taught a course or something like that, if your friends, so one of my best friend in the whole world is a teacher. In the subject line, what were you thinking, is triggering. It's triggering to the educators, triggering to the teacher, and so they're already up in arms. They're already kind of flustered, which is starting. It's not starting that amygdala hijacking. It's starting to. I need to reply to this. I don't need a reason through it. I need to reply to this. Talk to this individual. Make this not like go away, but calm this person down, because that's what they do to a lot of parents. And so
Right,
you see
right.
this, like Emma showed me your comments on her homework and it's attached. What in the hell makes you think this comment is appropriate? Everything leads to the educator to like, oh my gosh, just another one. The only thing that can possibly save, not like they're doomed in, is just hopefully they don't have an Emma in their class. I like
Yeah, I know.
picking the name Emma because it's pretty common.
It's a very
It's
I picked a
yeah,
common name right now.
it's pretty common. So it's playing on a lot of the principles of influence because um ironically this is one of authority, which is not quite authority, but it's a parent that's demanding response. And as an educator, you want to respond to the parent because they're demanding response on something with their child. In Seattle, CPA at Gmail, it reads well. It doesn't give like any red flags that, hey, this doesn't exist. So they created a Gmail account, which is smart. And so it's a good one. You did a good job with this one.
Well, good. I passed the test, but part of it was I borrowed from some of the things that you've said, and also, again, hearkening back to Dr. Mark Dupuy, who is a cybersecurity expert and he's a professor. He challenges his students to phish him, and he said the one time that a student was successful was when they posed as a parent, because he was like, "This looks suspicious, but I can't ignore an angry parent. I have to," and he felt compelled to respond. Hopefully, and the point there was that hopefully the teachers will, or anyone that sees this sort of attack, you don't jump down that rabbit hole immediately. You pause, you tap the brakes, you confirm through maybe some other means. You call Emma's parents directly on the phone rather than replying to this email and opening the attachment. And part of the reason, the inspiration for this too, is my own experience with security awareness training. And at EXP Technical, we've created security awareness training and we give it away for free, and it's available at EXP Academy, academy.exptechnical.com. And in that training, the information is somewhat generic and broad, and we've had about 2,000 students complete the training, and only 3 or 4 have offered complaints. And the complaints, they've all been the same. And I feel like we've done a disservice to the students. The students have said, "Well, this is common sense," or "Anyone who gets phished this way deserves it," was a recent one. And literally, there have only been 3 or 4, but I felt like they don't realize a just slightly more personalized attack that hits them at the wrong moment is very likely to be successful. I worry a little bit about the arrogance or the overconfidence of that student as they go out and about in life. But again, I'm kind of monologuing here, and you're our guest speaker. So, no, but I guess, so my question though is, if I've turned this into a question, do you have any thoughts or comments about like overconfidence? Or one of your recent podcast guests talked about anti-fragility, and being overly confident is kind of a fragile state of, oh, I'm not going to even uh, entertain the idea that I could be a victim of this sort of attack. So, do you have any comments about overconfidence or the anti-fragility posture when it comes to the cybersecurity?
Yeah, overconfidence is the enemy. Period. So cyber professionals, IT professionals, a lot of them operate with that they know the technology and so they can't be hacked. And that is the worst situation you can be, because one of the attack vectors we have as people is comfort. The more comfortable you are, the more hackable you become. Because if you're guarded, if you're up in arms, just think of the internet as a new city. So when you go out to vacation, let's say we're vacationing in New York, and you walk around, you have your backpack on or you have your purse out, I guarantee you clench that purse a little tighter, and because you don't want anyone to take that from you. And so if you're too comfortable in this unique or on the internet or online, you think you can't be hacked, you got this bravado about you, that is a scary place to be, because you don't quite understand that all of us as people are vulnerable. You may protect your computer, you may protect your network very, very well, but are you protecting yourself? You're answering to various emails, or you probably are hacked and didn't even know it. Or you have that bravado and you work in an organization and you've been hacked and you're scared to admit it. And so that's how you end up with, hey, 3 years ago, this happened. How the hell no one found this? Because someone hid it.
Right. Right. And and it's been lying dormant, or people have been extracting information for all this time. There's even a comment in the Q&A from one of our audience members, for lack of a better word, and she wrote, "It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when," which is a great way to think about it. That we need to be. You can't let your guard down. You can't think, "Oh, yeah, it's only stupid people that fall for this." That's not the case at all.
No, it's analogous to drivers. Like, everyone says everyone sucks at driving, but
Yeah.
everyone thinks they're a good driver.
Yeah.
Those two things can't be true. Like, everyone sucks at driving, but everyone thinks they're a good driver.
Right.
You want crappy drivers out there.
So I'm going to circle back to that in a minute, but I want to share another example. So the things that you're saying are they are relevant to some of the illustration examples that I wanted to share. So if I did it right now, there should be, yeah, it looks like it's working. There's a YouTube video. This is an excerpt from our security awareness training, and it speaks a little bit actually to some of the things you've already outlined, but authority and authoritative. This is a voice cloning, and it's frankly, it's some of the comic relief in our security awareness training, but I'll just play it and hopefully you can see and hear it.
In this lesson, we're going to talk about voice... Oh, hang on a second. Important call. Yeah.
Kelly, listen, I need a favor.
Okay, what's up?
Go to Walmart and buy all of the gift cards. Put it on your credit card.
My company card?
Yes, your company credit card.
Well, shouldn't I get approval from Tony or Bianca before I do that?
That's the stupidest thing I have ever heard.
Well,
Kelly, shut up. Just go to the store. I will call back in 1 hour.
It just seems a little sketchy.
Can't talk. Heading into a very big, beautiful tunnel.
Okay.
So I'll stop that right there. But, you made me think of that earlier because you said authoritative, and I don't know if everyone else hears it this way, but that moment, I made it, so I'm on both sides of that conversation. But when he says, "Kelly, shut up," it sounds like a parental command, and I feel like, oh, I better pay attention. But yeah, any thoughts on that, or voice cloning, or just the principles of influence that we're seeing in this sort of a video?
First of all, hilarious.
Well,
yeah, first of all, absolutely hilarious. But I think the principles of influence there, yeah, authority is a very good play on that. And also, we've seen attacks exactly like this be successful. We've seen it from a text perspective, but when you add the audio to it and the person can hear that, that's another check in the validation of the victim's mind, or the potential victim's mind, because even if they are aware, the fact that they can hear someone, and if the audio sounds smooth and it sounds like a command that they would follow, that makes it very hard. Because as a human, as a person, if you can hear the person, great. We all know, like, if you hear your mom's voice, that impacts the body.
Oh yeah.
So you begin to feel love. Like you physically, your heart, your mind, the amino acids and the proteins go through your body, you feel love. And so you hear your mom or you hear your dad's voice, it's a calming effect to you. It's happened as a kid. That's why we do some of the things we do as children. The same thing goes in as an adult. So, but if you hear like a coworker or the CEO's voice, the similar things happen, similar proteins. Like if you're fearful of your job, man, like during the pandemic, I would send out phishing campaigns, say, hey, layoffs, especially even now, like layoffs are happening. People would click those like crazy because people
Oh
are
yeah.
fearful of their jobs. And so, but if they could see or hear the CEO saying, hey, let's meet, or I need you to click this, or I need you to do this because there is this potential negative impact happening on the company, people begin to act. They begin to react without fully thinking and reasoning their way through the situation. So yeah, a lot of the principles of influence are being put in play there.
Right.
If they don't
Right.
give up commitment, consistency, liking, authority, a lot of those are being put into play there.
And the thing of it is, and voice cloning, I mean, that's an attack that we're starting to see. And like you mentioned, the example earlier, they're not that common though quite yet. I would encourage people to Google the 60 Minutes episode that had voice cloning on it, because it talks a lot about these sort of attacks that are aimed at our parents and our grandparents. And they fooled an intern. But where I'm headed with this is, if you listen closely to that imitated voice, it's not a very good imitation, but I'm using phrases that he might use that we associate with that voice. And there are other things that kind of sell it. And again, it's that parental command is the one that gets me, where he says, "Shut up, just do this." That's the one that kind of snaps me to attention. And it speaks to a concept that you have mentioned before, which you've referred to as human factor authentication. We start to believe this is the person, right?
Yeah. So with human factor authentication, we all try to authenticate the person before we accept the message. And if you respect the person, or if you trust the person, you're more likely to accept the message, regardless if it's real or if it's fake. We've seen a lot of that with misinformation and disinformation campaigns that go out. If you can get to the person that the other individual respects, or if they trust that person, they're more likely to trust that message. Just like if you go out to eat, you'll ask a friend like, hey, is this new restaurant, is it pretty good? And they say, yeah, you're more likely to go out there. But if your friend said, no, it is terrible, it is awful, you're less likely to follow up and do what they say do. So the human factor authentication is massive in a digital environment. You do it from a name. You try to read a name. If you trust a name, you begin to feel something there, or you read the email address. If you begin to, you trust the email address, and you know who that email address belongs to, you're more likely to accept that message as well. But if you can hear the voice, that kind of checks all the boxes. Like, hey, I hear the voice. I think this voice is real. And if they get you to buy into that voice, it's like hook, line, and sinker. Not that you're guaranteed screwed. It's going to be harder for you to recognize that attack is fake.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. So I've got another one to share. This is from the pros, so these people are much better at comedy than I am. But you'll recognize this as soon as you see it. But it speaks to something that you mentioned before.
Mike, what is your deal, man?
Oh, come on, man. You've been riding me all day.
Mike, you're playing like Betty White out there.
That's not what your girlfriend said.
Baby! Eat Snickers. Better?
Better.
I'm all bet!
That hurt.
You're not you when you're hungry. Snickers satisfies.
All right, let me stop that. So first of all, I find that commercial hilarious, but it also speaks to the thing a little bit about the driver thing. And what I mean is that sometimes you talk about people's vulnerability to attack. And one thing I've heard you mention before is emotional instability. And just like driving, nobody would say, oh, I'm a bad driver. That everybody thinks they're a good driver. Everybody thinks they're emotionally stable. But when you're hungry, when you're distracted, when you're in fear of your losing your job, when you're going through a divorce, or just late to pick up the kids, you're very likely emotionally unstable. And if you're scrolling your work email in those moments, you're particularly vulnerable, correct?
Yeah. So if you're more comfortable, if you're more distracted, you're more likely to end up to fall victim to digital social engineering. What we call those psychologically, those are emotional hot states. If you're in an emotional hot state, like if you're way too busy at work, you're less likely to take time and read things through. And it's something kind of we built into a lot of our organization is these emotional hot states. Like if you apply for a job or if your organization says, hey, a fast-paced environment, which is, hey, if it's a fast-paced environment, you might be in more emotionally hot states than someone else. Not to say, hey, every workplace needs to be calming and relaxed. You just got to understand that individuals in emotional hot states are less likely to think things and deductively reason their way through digital social engineering attempts. Like if you have 1,000 emails to read through, are you really reading 1,000 emails? You're kind of clicking through them. I've been there as well. You're kind of just clicking through them and you're like, all right, cool. They need this, send this off. So you can get through that stack of emails that you have because you're just currently in an emotional hot state. Doesn't mean that you're a bad person or you're stupid at that moment. You're just trying to get things done as quickly as you possibly can. So you're not thinking things through. And that's exactly what the attackers want. Because if you really take your time and you think everything through from a third person point of view, you can see the mistake the person's making and it looks obvious. But when you're in it, it's like, oh man, I missed that one. To the car analogy, it's like, hey, there's a lot of car accidents out there and all of them made a mistake. None of them wish that would happen. Well, I would say most of them. Most of them made a mistake and they just like, man, like, how'd you miss that? How did you not see that stop sign? It's like, well, I was texting, I was calling, I had my easy bake oven going on, I was making cookies on the side. They're just totally distracted. And that's essentially in a roundabout way what we find ourselves in when we just jump into our inbox alone.
So the question comes in, that's how do we recognize those states and respond? What do we do? And I think what they're asking is what's the news that they can use from that with this information?
Yeah, with emotional hot states, is just I tell everybody to use the same analogy. When you go online, you're in a new city. You're actually in a whole new world, and so understand, like, detach yourself from the situation and understand, like, hey, if I'm just way too busy, which means I probably need to slow down for this particular moment in time. Granted, I know everything in you just wants to catch up, but as you read messages and it requires you to send something off or requires your response and your attention, give it your attention. Don't give it part of your attention, give it all of your attention, and then reason your way through that. Because it's not, the criminal is not putting you in an emotional hot state. Your environment has put you in an emotional hot state. So you're clicking through all these things. Understand that, yes, I'm in a whole new environment. I'm in a whole new world. I need to detach myself from the situation and put my guard up and not get so comfortable. Put my guard up and say, hey, before I send off this message, is this who I think it is? It's well worth taking the time to slow down and try to pull yourself out of an emotional hot state than just to hope nothing bad happens.
Right. Yeah, tap the brakes and think twice for sure. In our training, we use the SLAM analogy: sender, links, attachment, message. But really, the point is that's not really a foolproof way to not be hacked, but it does force people to slow down and think about, am I really expecting email from this person? Or does this link lead to the organization that it claims to be from, et cetera, et cetera. So you have some information to share too, right? And I want to, this is kind of a clumsy segue, but I'm not sure if you're aware, but since the last time you presented, there's this thing called AI
Never
that's
heard
come
of it.
out. Yeah, and I think you've been doing some research on that, correct? And on people's ability to differentiate between artificial intelligence or generated images or other things like that. So I'll shut up. Maybe you can speak to us on what your research has been and maybe some of the examples that you have to share too.
Yeah, so I've been conducting a significant amount of studies on AI in conjunction with social engineering attempts and the psychological effects of it. Because as we see, we hear deep fakes, we hear like the vocal cloning. And so I was curious on how well does the human brain recognize human faces? Do we recognize human faces, and can we recognize artificially generated human faces? So I've conducted 2 studies we're nearing over 1,000 people, and you're just trying to see if they can recognize if a face is real or artificially generated. And so when we use artificially generated faces, we're using faces that a computer generated by itself. And so we asked our AI generated servers that create a human face. Sometimes we can ask like, hey, do you create a male face, female face, African American face, a Caucasian face, something like that. But it's all faces that do not exist in the world. And so what I have for us today, we'll run through 10 of these. I'm gonna ask the audience, we won't do this long. I'm gonna show a face and give you a couple seconds and see if you can recognize, are they real or are they AI? Let's have fun, and let's
I've got a
see.
poll too. So I just launched a poll, and so people should be able to answer with each one of these too. So I'm going to try to do this as quickly as I can too. So you should see a poll question: image 1, real or computer generated imagery?
Okay, so all right, here we go. Is this face real or is it AI?
All right, everybody vote. Vote quickly because we're going to go through these pretty quick.
All right, should I click to the next one?
So do you have the answer for this? I can end the poll and we can see the answer.
Boom, that one's real.
Okay, we were 52% to 48%. I'll
That's
show the
about
result.
average. It's okay.
So we did pretty good there. Let me
All
see if
right.
I can, this might get clumsy. I'll try to.
It's all good. Real or AI?
Let me, oh man, my polls, I'm not as fast on my fingers on the polls.
It's totally fine. We're having fun with it. It gives everyone a little bit more time, which isn't quite fair, but it's okay.
Let's see. Oh, go back. Oh, here we go. So we'll launch poll number 2. Now I know how to do it. Real or CGI? Oh, we're pretty close here. Oh, I'm ending it now, so we'll share the results. The votes are 57 to 43, and it was real.
That one was real.
Let's do another.
Real or AI?
I'll launch it. This is kind of fun. Oh, I know my opinion on this one.
All right. That one's AI.
We were 61%, 63% got that one.
Nice. All right.
See, there they are.
We're getting it. Not real AI here.
This is fun. Everybody's clicking in. Look at that. The votes are in favor of real, 71%.
All right, that one's AI.
That one got them.
All right, and real AI?
I think that one's real.
All right, you ready for this?
Sure. I'll share the
Best
results.
one I've ever seen.
Oh, wow. That one got me.
The That was actually one of the best ones I've ever seen.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. I'm gonna click quickly. Okay, we'll end the poll. We'll share the results.
She's real.
Most people were wrong. 67 said CGI. We've just got a couple more of these, right? We're on number
Oh, yeah.
6.
Yeah, we got 10. So we're coming down to the nitty gritty end of this.
Yeah, this is fun though. Okay. Last clicks. I'm closing it.
All right, and she's real.
Most people, 70% on that one were computer generated.
All right. All right, I'm gonna click show us in the grand reveal. She's real.
All
right, we got 2 more. We got this one and 1 more left.
Okay. Launch the poll. I'm going to say out loud, I think that one's computer generated. I'm going to end the poll and share it. Sorry if you didn't get your votes in time. Hey, I was right on that one.
Nice. Yep, you're right. And this is the very last one.
Okay, for all the marbles. There are no marbles.
Well,
this one's tough because of the overexposure kind of adds an element of realism, doesn't it? I'm going to vote real, but it could be very clever. Most people are siding with me on real.
good job. All right, we're real. That one.
All right.
All right, it's I'll stop my share.
So what are the cybersecurity implications of all of this? I mean, it's a fun game to play, but I imagine this leads to deep fakes and facial recognition and other ways that attackers could use our gullibility against us, correct?
Exactly. So what happens, you can play on a lot of principles of influence. And so if you find the person attractive, it plays on the principle of liking. And so individuals, they can use, whether not just deep fakes, they can create fake accounts on social media to try to elicit different responses for business transactions, like create a fake LinkedIn account with some completely fake individuals and come up with images of that person. And so it's hard to find that
there are fake accounts on LinkedIn. What?
Oh yeah, 100%, 100%. LinkedIn, Instagram, all of them. And so what happens is that these individuals they're playing on your principles of influence for could be malicious purposes, could be business purposes, and things like that by itself. There is an AI generated salesperson for, I won't say the organization, for an organization that exists out there. And that person makes $10,000 a month in sales, and they don't exist. Like they don't exist at all. And so it is a unique way now attackers can target individuals, because before they would use anonymity, the fact that you cannot see them, you cannot hear them, as a way to mask themselves behind the environment to play on those principles of influence. Because if you could see and hear the Nigerian prince, nobody's fallen victim to that.
Right.
Nobody's fallen victim to anything of the sort. But now attackers can be selectively visible, and they can let you hear them selectively in the way that they want you to see them, or in the way that they want you to hear them, as they continue to conduct social engineering attempts. It is a wild world out there. And to know that if you got a bunch of them wrong, you're falling in line with the norm.
You're human, yeah.
When we allow filters up to the minute, I was just working on this data this morning. It's still 28 point, almost round up to 29% of people get it correct. So if you got most of them correct, congratulations, you're unique and you're doing very well. If you got a lot of them wrong, that you're just in line with the rest of us. And that includes cybersecurity professionals and everyone, and just wrap everyone in the general population. We're only getting about 28 to 29% of AI generated faces correct, because AI has gotten good enough where the human brain just sees like, hey, this is
It's a
That is
face.
a face. That is a person. And so where do we go from here? It is a scary sight because it really plays on the principles of influence when we're operating in this environment that like, oh man, now
You know,
it's scary. Now it's
I
scary because social engineering is going to be very common.
I take comfort from your last, I think it was your most recent podcast with John Kindervag. I'm not
Yeah.
sure if I'm saying his name right, but at the end of that, he said it is scary, but we're pretty smart and we faced tough challenges before, and we'll find a way to engineer or social engineer our way out of them. We've got just a couple of minutes remaining. We have had a couple of questions that come in. I just want to let people know you can submit questions if you have time. I mean, if you can type quickly, but otherwise we're going to start wrapping up here in just a second. I don't see any questions jumping to the chat. So I did want to go back to you, Erik. In the last minute or so that we have remaining, do you have any closing comments, ways to sum up, news that our audience can use, or things that you want to, departing words that you want to leave our audience with, or lessons that you want to share here before we wrap up?
Yeah, I would just like to say, first of all, thank you for having me on. And then lastly, I want to say that we're the difference between success and data breach. I focus a lot on the human factor because I believe in people. I believe in us, and I believe in that we can overcome this. Like it's showing how we're all vulnerable as people, yes, but also you're the biggest success of data breach or failure in your organization. You've blocked more phishing attacks than your spam filter could ever imagine. And so you're valuable. You're a valuable asset. It's just a level of awareness that we have to continually have to stop the 78% of data breaches. If we can cut that in half, we've changed the economics of cybercrime entirely. And I believe that is our method to success. And I believe in the strength of people. And we just got to understand that this is hard. This is unique. This is weird. But we're more than capable of overcoming this.
Oh, awesome. So thank you so much for joining us. And what you said just now speaks to the intent behind this series. We're trying to discuss cybersecurity regularly because we want to fine-tune that human firewall. And I'm borrowing a phrase that you've used in the past, but I really appreciate you taking the time to meet with us today, Dr. Erik Huffman. Thank you so much. And thank you for everyone in attendance and in your good spirit to engage in the polls and all of that information. And with that, I think we'll wrap up. My clock shows 1 p.m. So thank you everyone for attending. And once again, thank you, Dr. Erik Huffman.
All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity.